Hello and welcome. It's our Bad Blood review here at Post Wrestling. I am John Pollock alongside Wai Ting, just moments after the event that went down from Atlanta, Georgia. Hello, Wai.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm doing well. We got a compact show tonight starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. How did you feel about this earlier start time than usual?
You're being sarcastic, right?
No,
Compact?
this was an earlier start time.
But it wasn't compact. I mean, it was
No,
three and a
it
half
was
hours.
3.5 hours. Although, I mean, it felt like it had its placements.
Yeah. I mean, it was 5 matches, and then like with the usual stuff in between, with an extra segment in between, which is not that unusual these days. But like for I think what has been traditionally slotted for a B-level show, this didn't really feel like that in either duration or I would say like in terms of grandiosity, maybe. But by the end, you had some big things happen on this particular show. So yeah.
If 5 years ago I were to tell you that WWE will end a pay-per-view and the final words out of Michael Cole's mouth would be UFC 307, watch it,
Would be hard to imagine. Yeah.
would be. But yes, UFC 307 is going on now. They got this one out before the main card, and that was by design. And I don't know how many of these we're going to see in the future when they're doing these double up shows, but you are sometimes going to run into these issues. But it clearly showed you they did not want to be stomping on themselves and going into the pay-per-view portion. But not so much the UFC, but Bad Blood. I think that is definitely going to have a big factor on Collision tonight, that it was kind of thrown into the midst of all of this on top of it. So I'm sure those will be intriguing numbers to get into. But we are getting into Bad Blood tonight from the State Farm Arena in Atlanta. Last number from WrestleTix, 14,496. They gave a number on the broadcast of just over 16,000, which in Michael Cole math was rounded later to nearly 17,000. I don't know if that's how rounding works. We had like 16,000 and change, and then it became nearly 17,000. Let's just call it an even million.
He was counting the marching bands and the Philharmonic Orchestra to make up for that number, I bet.
Yeah, was this the largest band budget that we have had, including WrestleManias?
I think it might have been the greatest gathering of musicians at a wrestling event of all time. Yeah.
Yes, when you include all the just the appearances by
Yeah.
various rappers, Killer Mike, lots of people were well represented, along with every opponent Triple H had in 2003. But we'll get into that. Liv Morgan, and this was on the pre-show. They did do a Liv Morgan Dominic sit down. I merely skimmed through this pre-show. Liv Morgan, I thought that this sit down, how many months has this Rhea Ripley program been going on for, Wai? Like months and months.
Yeah.
And she gives this whole story about how in April of 2002, Rhea Ripley turned on me when I was her partner. And I vowed then that I was going to set out on this revenge tour. And then she destroyed my shoulder in July of 2023. And now I have come back for revenge. It was like, the shoulder, yes, they have incorporated that. I don't know if they've ever mentioned or revisited this turn that happened 2 years ago. It's like how has this never been a focal point of this feud to more so than anything else? But that was something you got in this sit down interview.
Maybe she decided to go on the network or go on Peacock and realize, oh yeah, I have further reason to be mad at this person. Let's just throw that in there.
She forgot about that one too. And then there was a sit down with Nia Jax, very short. They just talked about, past matches with Bayley, including the takeover in London in 2015. The show started with Paul Levesque and Cody Rhodes meeting in a parking lot. This was like, I felt like I was watching All the President's Men here. Levesque and Cody meet in a parking lot. This is dated in July. And Cody has been given this mission, this confidential mission, to go on a stakeout with Metro Boomin for 3 months outside this arena. And if he runs into a jam, text Roman. So we go up and they're on their stakeout. And now it's the night. And they drive into the arena in their Ford. Did I encapsulate all of this?
You did. You certainly did. So I mean, we've seen these teases ever since they announced Bad Blood, taking place in Atlanta, and these were like these commercials that we've all seen of Metro Boomin with Cody Rhodes in the stakeout in front of the building, and I guess in my mind, I had always pictured them like maybe actually building up to some sort of reveal. And I suppose the reveal here was just that this was a mission from Triple H to stake out what we like nothing really. All that's
did you see the document that Brandon Thurston posted this week? He got from Texas about WWE, and there you see it in writing that they get a hold on the building for any wrestling related events 90 days before and 60 days after. Maybe Cody was staking out, making sure there were no competing wrestling events trying to get into the State Farm Arena over the last 3 months before Bad Blood.
Oh, is it 3 months? Yeah. Well, okay. That's an interesting use. I think Metro could have done that job by himself. I don't think Cody needed to be.
I don't think he had to pull Cody off the road for this.
Yeah. Listen, I love the idea that they're using these like they're creating or at least attempting to create a bit of narrative for these otherwise just pretty generic, monthly promos we see for these pay-per-views, especially with the use of a celebrity here, in a Metro Boomin, getting him to play along in a story. I think it is great. I even like this little thing they shot with Triple H. I do wish it came with a bit more substance to it and a bit more of a sort of big reveal towards the end. So I hope that the next time they try something like this, it actually leads to just even maybe some form of like big reveal for an entrance or something like that. I don't think they completely nailed it at the end, but I like the idea.
And tonight's presenting sponsors, Wendy's and Morgan & Morgan Insurance.
Yeah, Wendy's okay. Morgan & Morgan must be a pretty big company that we don't really get here, but like the logo is just like really of this dude. Like it looks like Salino and Barnes, like like the most local type of like
Salino and Barnes.
Yeah, Buffalo. Brandon Thurston would appreciate that. People in Buffalo would. Yeah.
There you have it. Well, quite the pairing of sponsors.
They must have a lot of money.
And they were hyping up that tonight Paul Levesque has a historic announcement to make. Historic, okay? Remember that terminology.
Sure.
Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill, and Naomi are the hosts, and they showed up in the ring, and they just hosted tonight. They introduced us to the Hell in a Cell structure, and then they went to hang out in the VIP party room all night, and that was about the extent of it. Now, I say that in jest. I did think one thing that they got across really well, I thought throughout the night, was this party vibe, that this felt like a big event, that we got all these stars out, that we got all these legends from the past, there's all these people in attendance. They made you feel like this was the big event in town, and I think that they did a really great job. And just throwing on like these hosts, like why not?
Yeah, 100% agreed with you about the party vibe. I mean, and I think we're continuing to see the Endeavor effect with I think how much they're heightening their celebrity integration, the quality and level of celebrity that they're getting to participate, not just appearing at these shows, but actually doing stuff, co-promotionally. And I thought tonight was like a great example of it, and this hosting role, like it's a way to get Bianca and Jade and Naomi on the show. We can say at least they've done more than other hosts in this position in the past who like might just make one on-camera appearance. I guess they are technically the hosts of the party, of the VIP party. That's what they were here for.
Yeah, and they did do a digital thing where Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend were outside and I guess are trying to challenge Belair and Jade, and Belair
they couldn't get into the party?
Well, that's what Bianca joked about. Is like, you guys can't even get in to the building, but just kind of mock them being outside with the fans.
Right.
And yes, at ringside, we have Killer Mike, Bill Goldberg, and the big get of the night, Gage. Gage Goldberg is out.
Yeah.
The second biggest Gage in pro wrestling.
That's right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Opening things up, Drew McIntyre and CM Punk in the Hell in a Cell match. I'll ask you about thoughts on the placement after we go through the match. But sure. Corey Graves teased us up by explaining, in this industry, we try to avoid the use of the word hatred, but that's all that we can use to describe the emotion between these two. And as soon as the bell rings, we have CM Punk, who is in his CM Punk attire, where the stars on his back, he's got a heart in the style of a Shawn Michaels colors that he wore at Bad Blood, some 27 years to the day of the first Bad Blood.
Interesting. Okay. Oh, I see it. All right.
And Drew is wearing a black armband, which Graves would later clarify during the match is because this is CM Punk's funeral.
Yes. I like those attentions to detail. You kind of saw it up and down the card of people either having special attire or, in Drew's case, doing something to.
I thought this guy was like honoring like Dikembe Mutombo in Atlanta or something, but no, he's this is a storyline for CM Punk.
Right. Yeah. Also, like, this seems new to me, but they added flames inside the cage as it lowered. I mean, I thought that looked really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this. The Hell in a Cell, it has its own theme music. It's got its own pyro. We were also back to the traditional cage, which today and this is, it's a smart little thing that as I just was on YouTube this afternoon, 7,000 people were watching a live camera on the construction of the Hell in a Cell.
So apparently it wasn't live. It was pre-taped beforehand, but
it was pre-taped. Okay, got to get all the kinks out of the way so that we don't have a screw up live.
Well, I guess it would be cutting it a bit close to like just construct it,
right.
So many hours. But it's a neat little thing. I'm sure it attracted plenty of
They catch Drew and Punk going into the ring to go through the match beforehand.
That would be a premium feature on Netflix, maybe. Yeah.
After their photo a few weeks ago. Michael Cole warns us this will not be a 5-star wrestling classic. Well, by the end of tonight, I think that this one was.
We'll be the judge of that. Okay.
Yeah. Just sit back, Michael Cole. Go study up on Ole and Dusty and your other Omni history tonight.
Maybe it's good reverse psychology. Usually we hear people say this is going to be a 5-star classic. It's going to be a 6-star classic. This is not going to be a 5-star classic.
This match is going to suck.
Yeah.
So early on, Drew gets a toolbox. You can always rely on the toolbox, and a wrench is used. The wrench would be the weapon of choice here, to quote Fatboy Slim, and it gets grinded onto Drew's forehead. But Drew then rips off a pair of the table legs. Punk uses those after drop toe holding Drew onto the side of the table. At one point, they go to the floor, and we can hear the crowd chanting, "Fix the screen," which I imagine they did because this chant died out. Punk is the first one to do color, and he's got a pretty good flow going here, but then he drills Drew with the toolbox, and this man was like an ocean of blood was flowing through this man's pores as Graves brings up the Muda scale, and I mean, Drew just bled a gusher here to the point that the referee was getting a towel and wiping him down, which of course this crowd was booing. They're like, no, we want to see this visual of this man blinded by his own blood.
So I was very curious to see, because they had promised blood from both men prior to this in the build-up. I was very curious to see how they would handle it. Did you have any debate amongst yourself about whether or not this was legitimate blood?
I mean, my impression was this looked pretty legit.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll find out. Maybe even as soon as I don't know, this press conference answers towards that.
I don't think they're going to go into that at the press conference. I mean, even if they're asked, they're not going to share. I mean, it would be one interesting fact just about if, like, it's one thing going in, and I certainly think we've had the instances of this, but like, are they flat out like blading his back on the table?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that would be significant. It's been years to my recollection that like they've not only promoted essentially blood for a match ahead of time, and then if this is legitimate, like actually gave us blade jobs, and it would call to some form of change in thinking and philosophy and in their maybe just sort of attitudes towards blood use. But I'll say, like, my initial reaction was that like this felt like it was a lot of blood and that it was really bright at the opening. But like that close up of Drew McIntyre towards the end, as like it was just flowing off of his head, that looked very realistic to me, and I would say certainly the ref wiping them down certainly added to the realism of it all. So we're recording this right after the show, so we don't have all the information, but I'll say I'm actually hoping that this was not real blood. And I say that because I think this is a match that would be a prime example of telling the wrestling world that, like, we could use fake blood. Potentially. Like I'm only saying if that's the case. Like dramatic effect was certainly there, so that's what I'm actually hoping for. But I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't either.
There is a Claymore that Drew hits for the first big near fall of the match, and they don't even go for a cover until about 18 minutes into this. They were just building up with this was a grudge bout, and it doesn't really make sense to just be going for pins early on. Like, this is all about the violence that you are inflicting on the opponent. And Punk then avoids a wrench shot, and he applies a sharpshooter as we get to recreate the Austin Brett visual from WrestleMania 13 as Drew grabs the wrench and breaks free, which if only Steve had a wrench handed to him by Ken Shamrock in 1997.
This was lovely, and Drew certainly had the color to match, and if you're going to do a Brett Austin reference, really, probably one of the only matches in the WWE where you could replicate this particular scene these days.
There were actually, and maybe there were more, knowing that it's Punk, but you also had the spot where it was when Punk is seated on the apron and uses the toolbox, which is the spot that Brett uses with the ring bell in that match too. Like, that was pretty much note for note as well, and there's probably other ones in here that they may have incorporated into this match. So this is when Drew's face gets wiped, and they cut to a long shot, and the crowd is just livid at this. Like, how dare you? They're trading punches, and Drew deadlifts him, suplexes Punk off the apron through a table on the floor. Both men are down, and eventually Drew is trying to put the steps into the ring, and he looked like he was legit just either blown up or just could not lift these steps because he had to he knew he needed this was for a key spot for the ending. Gets the steps into the ring, and he lifts Punk, gets caught by a GTS for a near fall, and then Drew is up hitting the white noise on top of the steps for a 2 count. We had a Anaconda Vice counter, which Drew then grabs the wrench, but Punk takes it, smashes Drew, and he's up there standing over top Drew, just like he laid out in the promo, stating, "Pray to me." And he lifts up the wrench, and Drew capitalizes with a low blow, and Drew gets a bag. Was it Lego? Was it tacks? Was it glass? No, we got the first ever bag of beads, which Michael Cole, the plastic beads, the same type of beads that are representative of the bracelet from CM Punk. It's like, man, that's why he's using beads. I got it now. The Claymore, he goes
Come on, John. They're like, I imagine, like, I don't get mad at that. I know you're just trying to, be funny as well, but like, there are people that might only tune into these pay-per-views and I don't know, just have be questioning what's up with these beads. What is Quavo saying in the crowd? Does he know the significance of these beads?
Well, Punk then had the greatest counter for a Claymore where he just took one step back. So he misses the Claymore and ends up taking a back bump onto the steps, which looked, had we not just seen Swerve take the most hideous back bump on a cinder block, this would be the worst back bump spot I've seen this month. But he then is down and out from this missed Claymore. Punk wraps a chain around his knee, puts the beads in Drew's mouth, and hits a GTS onto the chain-wrapped knee to win the match at 31 minutes and 23 seconds. Punk stands triumphant on the steps, and Michael Cole says, "Ever the rebel, ever the controversial warrior. Tonight, the Second City Saint is the Second City Devil."
Oh, very nice.
The controversial warrior. And actually the best part of the post-match was Punk literally and figuratively slamming the door shut on Drew McIntyre, but he slammed it so hard it just reverberated and bounced right back towards him. And then he just collapses on the aisle going up as the medical team comes down to check on him along with Adam Pearce. A outstanding match, and I will get my opinion out after, but I want your thoughts on the match way and also the choice to kick off the show with us.
Okay, well, first, the choice to kick off the show with it, I think by the end of the night, we got our answer. You know, the ending that this show gave us could only be presented at the very end. And even without Dwayne Johnson being attached to the show, I think you still had enough justification to put that match towards the end because it had the big entrances. I think, you know, Roman's return match is a pretty big deal. Cody, certainly being a hometown guy, felt justified, you know, to be in that spot. Realistically, they couldn't have gone wrong with either direction. I definitely think it's a bit of a risk putting a Hell in a Cell, the spectacle of Hell in a Cell, along with a bloody Hell in a Cell early on, because the rest of the match, the rest of the card could have really suffered. But I don't think anything suffered, honestly, on this particular show as a result of the match order. So, in hindsight, I don't think this was a wrong decision at all. But I don't think they could have gone wrong if they went the other way. The match itself, was perfect. Like, this was outstanding. When you're talking about this year-long feud and, you know, maybe like a really well-reviewed maybe series of interactions outside of the ring, but sort of mixed reviews to the two matches that they had, a lot was riding on this particular match to deliver and to maybe really shape our overall feelings about the entire feud. And boy, did they stick the landing. You know, we're going to be talking this feud about this feud as one of the feuds of the year. And in years later, we'll be talking about this as one of the great feuds of all time, potentially. And I think so much of it rode on the quality of this match and how severe and violent it looked like. And they delivered that. You know, they gave us a lot of blood as promised. Well, real or fake, whatever, we'll find out. But the effect was there, and it greatly elevated the exhaustion of the individuals in the match. Gave us some incredible visuals in this match, in particular from Drew McIntyre, who like had, you know, just beyond the blood, like the poses and the facial expressions that he had while bleeding. Gave us some like really great comic book panels come to life. I was most curious to see the level of activity and risk that CM Punk would engage in a match like this, especially like, you know, like health is always a concern, you know, for somebody like that I'm sure they have great plans for. So like something like Hell in a Cell that's supposed to be a very violent match, how are they going to convey that while maybe minimizing the level of risk or giving us a high level of risk? And like, I thought the match ended up being like a great showcase of how you could achieve a whole lot without doing too much that was serious. Now they did take risk, you know, like that superplex off the corner through a table, like, was crazy. The white noise on the steps that Punk took was big. And then the Claymore that Drew missed that ended up on the steps, that was a big one too. But for the most part, like, how long was this match on? Like, what, half an hour?
31 minutes.
Half an hour match. Most of the content in this match, I have to say, didn't exceed the level that you would typically get in a wrestling match. And there was a lot of really good sleight of hand that they employed throughout the match, like using the wrench that, I mean, you know, got a big reaction, but it's not much more than just holding it onto somebody's head. The same thing with the table legs, you know, they were very creative and memorable spots that got great reactions, but didn't really do that much damage, in my opinion, to, you know, the performers. And so much of it, I think, was accentuated by the fact that you had blood, so you conveyed just the damage anyway. So I the bag of beads, you know, a perfect example. Like, it probably got as big of a reaction as thumbtacks would have in 2024, you know. And Jericho, you know, has kind of been a great example of, you know, the mystery of what's in the bag of beads and the reveal that it's hockey pucks. I mean, it kind of gets a big reaction just because it's different and because it's memorable. At its core, I thought this was a great wrestling match that just kind of happened to have a cell around it. And the focus on storytelling was just absolutely perfect, I would say. A great ending to this feud.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same thoughts. I thought that this was a tremendous Hell in a Cell match, that they didn't have to do anything that was, you know, there's a certain level you have to go to, but they had number one, a great crowd, and they had built up to all these different things that kind of paid themselves off. They promised blood. They even, like, whether you enjoyed the stuff with the bracelet or not, that had its own chapter in it. The portion about when you're on your knees praying for me, you know, they, like, all these things were kind of just like tying up all the loose ends that they had introduced in this as the definitive blow off match. If I had to say anything, I just thought, like, this was just such a great match that I didn't think anything touched this really until, like, the closing portion of the main event. I don't think that affected the crowd, though. This was
No.
a crowd that was into everything on this show. So you can, it certainly did not harm things that way. If I was structuring this, I really think you could have just, I'm not the biggest fan of you put your second biggest match first, but that's the WWE layout of things that they do these. If you're not the main event, then you're typically opening the show. So that's what they went with here. I just thought this was such a major start to the show that it was just, to me, nothing after this really followed it, instead of a show that kind of builds towards this. But this was easily my match of the show, and I thought this was just tremendous. And more importantly, when they do opt to do Hell in a Cell next time, how much more impact it's going to have after they have set the bar back at this level for this match. Like, they turn back the clock for a lot of people that had kind of, listen, we have a generation that have grown up where I don't think the Hell in a Cell concept has meant what it has, when we're talking about like 20 years ago, when it was a very effective tool to sell pay-per-views.
I think so that was their goal, seemingly, ahead of this, to reestablish and rebuild the Hell in a Cell. I think they've effectively done that. I think they've also created now a promise of blood for Hell in a Cell, and again, real or fake, we'll find out. But like,
they've also promised beads now that you have to also be aware will
blood and
every Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, blood, beads, and wrenches.
Then we had multiple in-between matches. We would show the various legends. First up was Jacqueline, Lillian Garcia, and Booker T in the crowd. I think Booker just gets the call for all of these things just to do appearances for.
He might just be there anyway.
Yeah, maybe. He wanted to go to the big party, which Kathy Kelly was at, the VIP lounge with Bianca Belair, Jade, and Naomi. And we had, just a bunch of people here in the booth with Jey Uso. We saw Tully. Arn was just sitting back there. So they eventually had to make their way ringside for their cameo appearance later. But that's what's going on there.
So you had Bianca, Jade, and Naomi get interviewed, and Naomi is asked about who she's cheering for, and Naomi says, I'm here to cheer for my girl Bayley. And then they cut to Bianca, who has to answer for the same question, and Bianca just gives this like great sort of like awkward reaction to saying, I wish her all the best, which of course, calls to the backstory that she still shares with Bayley about, all the stuff she's done to her in Damage Control. So if this was an ad lib, which I almost got the sense it could have been, I thought it was a little great bit of like, character maintenance from Bianca, and of course still, teases the future program between the two on SmackDown.
Well, that was next. It was Nia Jax against Pam for the Women's Championship.
Helena versus Pam.
Yes. So the beginning of this, it's Nia Jax dominating this match. Michael Cole calls it a Mets-like thrashing. And finally, Bayley is able to send Nia to the floor and goes for a suicide dive. And she just like bounces off of Nia, who like loses her balance taking this. Nia regains control and hangs her upside down in the corner for a splash. The Annihilator gets stopped, and Bayley tries for a powerbomb, which Nia was going to reverse with a Hurricane Rana, which this looked anything but. And Corey Graves yells, I'd like to see a replay of that, which was the first time me and Graves were on the same page. I too wanted to see a replay of that. And they showed it. And like, she doesn't even have her legs around her head. And Graves is like, brilliantly done. It's not always about style points. I'm like, no, but there's also something to be said for physics points, which this one didn't achieve on either. But yeah, that was one of our many issues here. Then the crowd starts chanting for Tiffany Stratton, and there is a sunset bomb attempt by Bayley into the corner. And Bayley, when she does these, she leaves like basically no room. So she goes over top Nia to send her into the corner. And Nia has nowhere to go but land on top of Bayley. So Bayley basically crushes herself with Nia Jax. And then they continue here. And we get Bayley with the elbow drop, drops another elbow on the floor, but she can't lift Nia to break the count. So Jax then ends up getting hold of Bayley, swinging her into, powerbombing her on the steps and swinging her into the barricade. And then my favorite spot of this. Nia goes for a pop-up Samoan that was delivered so badly that Michael Cole calls it a counter that Bayley managed, and he is so confused when Nia just goes for the cover after this and had no idea that this was just a terribly executed pop-up Samoan. So then Bayley hits her own Samoan drop, and then we get Jessica Carr in between them. She kicks Nia, who goes up in the air and comes down splashing Jessica Carr, which has to be the most insane referee bump I've ever seen in my life. She's dead. She is hit with the Rose Plant, but Jessica Carr is still down. The crowd is counting, so Tiffany's music plays, and we think we're getting the cash in. She nails Bayley with the briefcase, revives Jessica Carr, and then Nia does the Undertaker sit-up, and Jax is confronting Tiffany, and Bayley runs Jax into Stratton. We get a tease of a count with a 2 kick out. Stratton throws her case at Bayley from the floor. Bayley just throws it back, allowing Jax to hit the Samoan drop and an Annihilator in 14 minutes and 12 seconds, and Jax leaves without Tiffany Stratton. I thought this was a mess. That was my assessment of this match.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're entirely right. It's there. For me, it's a strange match to critique because from a technical standpoint, there was so much sloppiness in this match. Even in the Stratton cash-in alone, where she comes in, she's trying to hit Bayley with it, and it takes her like 3 times before she actually like gets a clean shot at her. To her trying to throw the briefcase at Bayley, and then Bayley trying to throw it back, but the briefcase the strap gets caught in the ropes, and like there are a lot of things that went terribly wrong here. Cole and Graves had to work overtime to make up for a lot of the just. Like, it really exposed them, in my opinion, you know, like
the one about the Hurricane Roll, like Corey Graves was just like, that was brilliant.
Sometimes
like, why are we airing a replay of this? Like,
no, sometimes you just got to be like, didn't get all of it, you know, whatever. But like, it's their job to try to protect everything. So it was not a pretty match. But you listen to this crowd. They were there for this. They were engaged for this, you know? And I think I found that especially impressive considering that this was the match that had the worst spot on the entire card, having to follow Hell in a Cell. Judging just strictly, I think by the crowd reaction alone, I think this was a successful match. Bayley worked her ass off here. Her pace of activity was very impressive. And I think when you talk about the pace of the match, you have to talk about Nia as well, who, you know, this is a much longer match than I think we're used to seeing her, and a much higher pace of activity than we're used to seeing her. I also feel like when it comes to Nia, a lot of what she does not look good, but her character and her type of wrestling, like her type of wrestler, I should say, could get away with it, because even if it doesn't look good, it looks heavy and it looks devastating, and in some ways looks convincing, like that awkward landing from the sunset bomb onto Bayley's leg. Bayley having to sell her leg afterwards just kind of adds to the effect of it, you know. So it's kind of like the Goldberg effect, where like, this is probably not the way this move is supposed to look, but you know it probably hurts the person taking it. So to that end, I thought this provided a good David Goliath match. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that for up and down the card, like, you had a great crowd, and I think that is going to elevate a lot. I just thought, like, execution-wise, like, I just thought this was like I can't remember seeing a match on any kind of a pay-per-view that just had these levels of problems that we saw. And that's not to say that you're wrong either, because the audience responds to this, and I think Nia is kind of granted that leeway that it's just sometimes a train wreck, and we've gotten to a point where it can be an entertaining train wreck, and maybe that's the compromise on this one. But I thought it was just one thing after the other in this one, and I could not believe. And we had 14 minutes of this way, 14 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that was the end, and Jax leaving without Tiffany. Xavier Woods was promoting Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. Sounds great.
It was fine, but I mean, this is also a person that's in the middle of a heel turn right now. And I mean, I kind of wanted to see a little bit of, like, you know, of that reflected in the promo. Otherwise, this just kind of felt like a, you know, pretty fake, like generic type of like product placement. You know, I kind of wanted
normal human being is using the word activation in just everyday language without being paid to say it.
Yeah, I kind of wanted him to like, he should give this game a bad review for just no reason. We can complain about losing, you know.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Then we go to, oh, sorry about that. We go to, X-Pac, Tully Blanchard, and Arn Anderson are introduced with Quavo, Lil Baby, and Metro Boomin. This is the table for six I wanted to see afterwards. Arn going up to Quavo and Little Baby.
I could think of maybe common hobbies that Arn would have with many rappers. Yeah.
Perhaps. Damian Priest and Finn Balor. So, I mean, I thought this match was good. I don't think it was kind of right at the level I kind of expected this to be. Priest was on offense for the beginning portion until Balor cut him off with a sling blade, and then you had Balor landing multiple stomps on the chest. Priest comes back, hits a razor's edge for a 2 count, and then shoves Balor over the desk and hits a razor's edge on the edge of the apron. The straps come down, which is the signal for Carlito and JD to run down. Priest gets snapped on the top rope and is hit with a shotgun dropkick. Coup de grace connects, but Priest kicks out, and the crowd is chanting "Yeet." But Jay was in party mode. He wasn't in I'm making a run in mode. So Carlito distracts as Balor gets a chair, but Priest boots the chair into Balor, sends JD out of the ring, fights them all off, and after Balor hits him with a final cut, goes for a coup de grace to the back, hits a second one, then goes for a third one, which is finally caught into a South of Heaven, and Priest wins in 12 minutes and 51 seconds.
Yeah. A very good match, like especially technically, everything looked good. Balor looked good here, like applying pressure throughout the entire match, and Priest looked pretty heroic, fighting off the man advantage. Great atmosphere as well. There's really nothing bad I could say, with the exception of saying like maybe it didn't feel that special, or that memorable by match's end.
And this is where I go back way to just I just felt like there was such a this match was the one where it hit me that I just feel we were following such an incredible match earlier that I just felt like it was like this match was just one where I think it was just totally disposable as soon as you were done this match.
But would match placement have saved this match? Like if this was the opener, would it have made it that much better?
I think it could have. Yeah.
I personally don't think so. I think I would have had a similar reaction. Again, match order is debatable, and there's no it's sort of a fine art, and I don't think there's necessarily a right answer for it. But for me, I think this was just a feud that really hasn't been that interesting.
Yeah, I didn't see any need beyond this. Priest got his win. It just feels like it was. I'm with you. Like it just felt like you had to do the match, but I don't think this necessitates much more beyond it. Paul Levesque comes out for his big announcement, and there's a crown jewel podium inside of the ring, and he jokes about terrorizing WCW back in 1994 when he lived in Atlanta, and gives the audience number of 16,092, nearly 17,000, their 60th sellout of the year, and he says largest grossing arena event in history, which he later clarified at the press conference, largest grossing U.S. arena event in history. So not as big as some of those European shows that they have set this year.
Still very impressive when you're considering
this crowd was so excited that they helped.
We paid a lot of money.
Yes, that secondary market was sick. And then he pivots to promote Crown Jewel, and boy, were there some audible boos when Crown Jewel was mentioned. Not the entire arena, but it was much like WrestleMania way when that video aired, and it was not everyone, but it was definitely audible.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because we just went through a UFC event that was entirely presented by Riyadh Season, and what sort of boos did you hear?
Dude, there was like none of that. Like it was just not to say there's not discourse of people like about that connection and such, but in terms of like in the venue or anything like that, nothing like this.
I think they have the expectation, and I think they're operating on the assumption that as the years progress, this is like Riyadh Season, Saudi Arabia is just going to be that much more commonplace in our culture. But for wrestling, I think we still hear about it inconsistently enough, and I think the online discourse, especially during the Khashoggi murder, was so vocal that it still kind of stays with the wrestling audience in ways that it hasn't with an MMA audience. And but I also think like the more Triple H mentions it, the more like look at the difference between now than 3 years ago. It's just going to become more and more normalized, I think.
Yeah, and I mean with the Anthony Joshua fight that just happened, I wrote about this in my update, but the name escapes me about this reporter who was with like a prominent outlet in the UK wrote like about this very topic and was turned away. His media credential was not honored at the boxing fight at Wembley Stadium a few weeks ago.
Oh, interesting.
So it does like it really does tell you like the sensitivity to that criticism and the fact that how they view like media as well, that if you're going to speak critically, like there's one example of of a reporter that was just turned away and couldn't cover them.
And we just passed the 6-year anniversary of the Khashoggi murder.
Yes, yeah, back in 2018. So Paul Levesque, getting back to his announcement that for Crown Jewel, they will be having champion versus champion matches with the WWE and world champions for both the men and the women, but titles won't be on the line. But wait, there will be a definitive winner, and those winners will be crowned the 2024 Crown Jewel champion. And he unveils this monstrosity of a championship that he promotes 50 carats of diamonds as like that's to get a pop from this crowd about the number of carats that these wrestlers will be able to dude, this title, God bless if they put this thing on WWE Shop to sell replicas of, because I know people will buy this thing, but this looked like the last thing I want to be taken through customs to have to lug back to America.
This is just like outrageously sized of a championship belt.
Like Rey Mysterio, this would be a bib.
Hold on, can you imagine Liv Morgan hoisting this up? All right, like she is a
correct. That's a very possible outcome to
this is obscenely large. I mean, if only just to kind of make up for the fact that it's supposed to be the championship of championships.
Just picture Liv Morgan with this, dude. This is bigger than her face.
I'm hoping they have like a scaled down version for the women, but I guess I don't know. Who knows? It's obscenely large. But listen, it's. How do you feel about the concept of bringing back the champion versus champion type of idea?
I didn't feel like it was like this big hook, but like it's going to be in terms of the matches. Like as of now, you would get Cody and Gunther, and you would have Liv and
Nia.
Yeah, okay.
Liv and Nia
for a championship. We'll see once a year, sure. Like
yeah,
I don't know. It's not
the trouble. The trouble, as in like previous Survivor Series when they've done this, is building to the matches by not having each champion on each show unless they allow that, for the months. I'm curious to see how they do it. And also like they've kind of done these sort of things before, despite this being a historical announcement. Like we've had Saudi specific, prizes like the greatest Royal Rumble, Shane McMahon winning the best in the world trophy. Like, is this just
that's what this is? Like, unless they announce something is attached to having this title, like what's the purpose of this title?
Yeah. So again, like now, since this is a Levesque era thing, like we can always be a bit more open-minded to see how he might treat it differently from the Vince era. But yeah, like I think so much of especially if this is going to be a yearly thing, so much of our respect for it going forward will be to see how they treat it after the event.
Yeah, like the King and Queen of the Ring, you got the title matches at SummerSlam. Okay, that was something really tangible, but we'll see. I mean, are we downplaying the amount of carats of diamonds?
Well, yeah, that too. Look at this thing.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Amazing.
All right. So that was Hunter's announcement, but the segment is not over yet because then Gunther comes out and says he's going to win this just like he won King of the Ring, but first he has to beat Sami Zayn, and says, Zayn is just not cut out to be a top guy. But he wants to focus on the legends in attendance, and the whole crowd starts chanting Goldberg, and he addresses Bill by stating, I want to clarify what I said to Brett a few weeks ago. You were not my childhood hero, Bill, because you were a one-trick pony. But then admits to Bill, I'm just busting balls. And he turns his attention to Gage. And he says that he hopes Bill is a better father than he was a pro wrestler. And this was hilarious because Gage like pretty much had to lean over and recite this promo to Bill in his ear because there's like a 10-second delay before Bill pops up out of his seat once Gage has told him what he said. And he jumps the barricade. This place is going nuts. But before he can get to Gunther, Sami Zayn runs out, attacking Gunther, and Goldberg stands tall in the ring with his old pal, Paul Levesque, and announces that Gunther is next as his music plays. And Bill Goldberg, the Tony Khan's #1 supporter, is back. And it looks like they are going to do a Goldberg-Gunther match.
This felt definitive enough to you, right? That they're going towards that direction.
I did. And in my thought process, like obviously this is very unlikely for Saudi Arabia because had they not made that announcement, you would think like this is a Saudi Arabia type of match. And if it's not Saudi Arabia, the place I'm doing this match is not Survivor Series. I'm doing it on that NBC special in December. I think Goldberg going for the title. I think, listen, we've done this pattern many, many times. I think that he's a way more better of an attraction on television. Like what could Goldberg pull for a network number as opposed to just putting it like Survivor Series? It's sold out. It's a gigantic gate. You've got War Games. Is he adding that much more versus you need a big hook on NBC and like Goldberg, his whole return run, he never did anything but pay-per-view. This would be a match, and you can get away doing this is going to be 5 minutes. I don't think Goldberg's going much longer than that. If 5
should not be more than that.
That's it, and that I think people will totally forgive on television with the spectacle of the entrance. That's what I would do, and if you notice later, they're promoting that Saturday night's main event as a premium live event. Like that's in their listing. Like they're going to make that their December show, but it's on free television.
Yeah, it really kind of lifts up its level from like what prior SNMAs have been, which is like really a skippable event. You know, by turning this into the December PLE, it kind of makes it a bit more must see. I like that idea a lot, John. Does Goldberg go for the championship? And if so, which one? All right. Is he going for Gunther's puny little, WWE World Championship, or does he go for the Man's Championship? All right. What the Crown Jewel Championship?
I'll tell you, the match, the money match is next year. Gunther versus Gage.
Gunther versus Gage. Wow, interesting. Yeah. You might be looking at a future, future Hall of Famer, the next Goldberg.
Yeah. Well.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah. Big segment and probably the best city to do it in Atlanta.
Yes.
So this got a great reaction on the show.
Do we get a future Brett and Goldberg interaction?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
They're connected now via Gunther. Come on.
Yeah, they do have the common. I mean, that's got to be Paul Levesque. His ultimate revenge for Brett is booking him to get him on camera with Bill Goldberg.
It's the new Mega Powers, okay? The final, can they get along? Goldberg and Brett on the same side.
DDP is shown with Mickie James and Scott Steiner on camera here. So again, we were going through just Hunter's Rolodex of 2003 opponents. Into the VIP room, and everyone's chilling, and then they smell something, and it's Chelsea Green, and they tell her to go take a shower. What bullies here? And so Chelsea tells Piper, let's leave, but Piper wants to stay and hang out with the cool kids. So
to flirt with Metro, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Chelsea's gimmick now is that she smells. So you can take Vince McMahon out of this company, but you can't take his ideas.
Chelsea, I would say, is like the one sort of remnant of like Vince style booking that I think still has a place.
Yeah. At least she's not leaning over and farting, which
next
was
year.
A thing.
That's Mania season.
Okay,
you say that.
Right. Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley for the women's championship was next. This was something else, where we get Michael Cole talking about the last battle of Atlanta with Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer, where Paul Ellering was put into a shark cage over the ring. And Dominic is placed in the cage. Of course, he's scared of heights as he's lifted up. And then Morgan has to get the heat, so eventually she chop blocks Rhea's knee, and she would also throw the shoulder into the barricade, working on that, hits a sunset bomb off the apron, and then hits an MX, a code breaker, off the turnbuckle, and Rhea counters Oblivion, drills Liv with a knee strike, and then Liv blocks the Riptide, hitting a crucifix bomb, which has now been named the Homewrecker, Corey Graves tells us.
I like it.
the homewrecker.
Yeah.
Rhea hits a frog splash after stopping the Three Amigos, and then the Prism Lock is applied. Liv gets to the rope and hits the Riptide on the floor, placing Liv in front of Dom, who looks down on the fallen Liv Morgan. And then Dominic opens the door, and everyone's concerned. They're like, wow, he's really high up there. And then Dominic falls out, and he is hanging from this cage by a chain around his leg. And this dude had to hang upside down for like a not insignificant period of time.
Oh no. Yeah, this was
like 5 minutes this guy had to hang upside down. And it's not like both legs were tied together and he's upside down. This was like one leg. It was just, this would have been exceptionally uncomfortable.
Oh, very much so. I mean, but the gag was the pinata spot with Rhea,
Yes.
of course.
Rhea, we had the referee cam again. So referee Dan Engler, we go to his camera as Rhea informs him, I'm going to go take care of some unfinished business if you can give me a minute. And Engler's like, okay, you deserve that.
What was this? Yeah. What if we ever had like a ref just like, okay. First of all, fast forward, okay? This match ends in a DQ, okay?
Yes,
so clearly this ref has some respect for the rules, yet he's also a ref that feels, you know what? You deserve it, Rhea. Dumb. You deserve it, Rhea. Go ahead. Like it was.
So she gets outrageous. The kendo stick, and it's the pinata spot with Dominic until a returning Raquel Rodriguez attacks Rhea Ripley, and the DQ is called. This is too beyond the pale, even for Dan Engler, a corrupt referee. 14 minutes, 32 seconds, and then this was interesting. She hits Rhea with the Tahana bomb, and she places Liv Morgan on top of Rhea, and I'm almost wondering if there was something like some miscommunication. Like at some point, was it discussed if Liv was just going to win this match from the interference or because the DQ was obviously done. They did not want to pin Rhea in this scenario, but it certainly felt like Raquel didn't get this memo because Cole's just got to cover this. Well, this is just symbolic because the bell has rung and they do go over the history of Raquel with Liv Morgan. And so that's our unit coming out of this: Liv, Raquel, and Dominic.
Mm-hmm. I think safe to say maybe the most disappointing finish of everything on the show. Well, the one sort of screwy finish. And I apologize to the caller who called in on a Rewind to SmackDown like maybe last week, suggesting this exact finish with Raquel Rodriguez. I just dismissed it because I didn't. Who was it?
No, I was asking you like what you said. I don't remember this.
Oh, I just dismissed it because I didn't think like Raquel was like a big enough name to put into like this high profile like position. But she does have the history, and tonight
with both of them. So yeah, storyline wise, it makes sense. But it's not like this crowd went crazy either. It's like, oh my god, it's Raquel.
Yeah, they gave him a pretty flat finish, and I mean, you know, she came in with a DQ. So what do you expect? But I also don't know how much of the audience recognizes it. It's a story that they can tell going forward. So you know, just maybe even beyond like the storyline. You know, it's. Raquel as a heel, I think her as like a Diesel, you know, type of heavy for Liv is a good role for her. You know, somebody to like do the dirty work, no pun intended, you know, for the rest of Judgment Day. I'm sure for her, this was also a very emotional comeback, you know, going through her health issues recently. So as a heel, she's not really allowed to show that, but I'm sure like, you know, behind the scenes, this was a big, meaningful moment for her. Too bad about like the sort of screw up at the end. But yeah, they you know, as we kind of suspected, they have to keep this feud going because there's simply nobody else for either of these two to feud with, and this program is just way too hard to extinguish. This did feel like a rather unsatisfying way to end it, though.
You're right, but also like it's kind of Liv is in this like kind of detour because she's going to be paired with the SmackDown champion for the next month, unless they're just going to do separate storylines on shows and they meet at the end of it, or you're just going to have Liv doing like multiple programs.
That's going to be the trick. You know, how are they going to build to these like crown jewel matches while still maintaining this Rhea program?
But I think Rhea and Raquel could like spin out of this and you eventually get back to Liv. That could be, this is a detour.
Survivor Series feels like it might be a good culminating point for Liv and Rhea.
We had the coming soon promo with all the Detroit imagery. Did you see the international broadcast of this clip on SmackDown?
I didn't see it. I heard about it.
Oh, amazing. Like I don't know what language this was in. Forgive me, but the clip is everywhere. And it's like the broadcasters for SmackDown in this language just call it Motor City Machine Guns. It's like, this is amazing. This is an amazing moment.
Clearly, they're not being given any direction, not being produced at all. I mean, it gives us incentive to listen to international broadcasts, I guess.
Anyway. To the main event we go. Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns against Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. We have Solo and Jacob Fatu just come out to their regular music. And then
God.
these guys, they had to just stand there in the ring as the parade began. First, we get the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff Marching Band performing Kingdom for Cody Rhodes, which we knew in advance was going to be coming out. And Michael Cole, I mean, he's just like slowly dialing up the hyperbole, calling this the most important match of Cody Rhodes' career. Tonight, this tag, this is it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but I guess no, I don't know about that one. It's in Atlanta. Does that trump WrestleMania 40?
I guess so. This was the biggest match of his career. Not to be outdone, Roman Reigns, who gets to come out last, isn't coming alone. Not with Paul Heyman, not with the Bloodline, but with his new backup, the Georgia Philharmonic. We had an entire orchestra booked for this guy, including how many cellos that you could count.
What I was impressed by was like how quickly they got the marching band out of there and got this Philharmonics to stand in their place. Like there's some like really really good coordination must have taken place here.
They got to marching. So, I mean, they're just cutting to Fatu and Sikoa. We're like, the hell is our band? Like, they just got like their theme. So they note how this is Roman's first match since WrestleMania and how he looks naked without that championship. And this match goes 26 minutes. And I'm going to say the first 20 minutes of this was like it was comical how Cody and Roman were just pantomiming every single thing and making it as absolutely slow and milking everything for what it's worth. Like just the raising of the arm, slowly looking to the crowd. I mean, it was, and listen, this crowd, they were going nuts for them. So I can't fault it. But I mean, this was like, you want to talk about getting the most out of the least. It was the first 20 minutes of this match.
Is that not the entire Roman Reigns run? Is that
but
not
even this was to me like at another level because you also had Cody doing it, and this is not Cody's style.
Okay, I see it because I find artistry in that, John. The fact that you're able to get that, like, but you do need the key ingredient of having this type of crowd reaction in order for something like this to be captivating, even on screen.
And that's why I'm not going to knock it. Like at the end of the day, does it work for the audience? And it did. Yeah. So like to knock it would be missing the entire point. But man, they built up to Reigns and Solo finally being tagged in together. And this match, it was structured around like Roman as the big focus of the match. Like it was Cody selling to build up to the hot tag by Roman on 2 occasions in this, and just Cody doing like great selling. And at one point, we have Fatu just beating down on Cody, and he looks at Solo. I love you, as he puts his hands together. This guy is fantastic, Jacob Fatu. Solo stops a Superman punch, and Reigns ducks the Samoan spike. So Reigns, man, has not been just sitting at home on a couch. He busts out a crucifix way, and then lands a Superman punch for a 2 count. Was this also the home wrecker? Could we have called this crucifix by Reigns?
What home is he wrecking?
Maybe the his extended Samoan family here.
Okay. The tree cutter, the family tree cutter.
That's it.
No.
So Reigns sets up for a spear, but Fatu intercepts. They take him out, and Fatu hits the springboard moonsault, and followed by a splash from Solo. Cody makes the save, and Fatu runs through the timekeeper's area when Cody sidesteps, gets his chairs involved. Cody hits the crossroads and says, "You stay down," and he places Fatu on the desk, and Cody climbs to the top. And he salutes to Roman. It's like, I'm about to die, and I might break my foot in the process, as he dives off the top of the post and puts Fatu through the desk. Place goes nuts, and it's left to Sikoa and Roman. Superman punch lands. He calls for the spear when the Tongans appear, and leads to a spear by Solo. He gets the near fall, and Solo is yelling at Roman, "You lied to me. You said I was next in line." And then we see a man appear in a hoodie, who takes out Tama and Tonga Loa with super kicks, and it's Jimmy Uso. So this place, you can imagine how they react. Solo is stunned by this, turns around into the spear, and Roman pins him in 25 minutes and 51 seconds as Jimmy wearing a "They Are Not the Ones" shirt. And you can tell Michael Cole, just all night long waiting for this line, for this particularly named pay-per-view, yells, "Blood is thicker than water."
Oh, Michael Cole.
Michael Cole was just like, he was just sitting back, firing them off.
Excellent. I thought this was a great tag team match, John. You know, it's a classically formatted match, which for a crowd this hot, you give them a classic style of match and you let the crowd be the star. There was no need for me to like have them do anything extra beyond that. I have to all talk about the entrances as well. Like that's a big part of this match where I think they just like gave you some really big, larger than life types.
Oh, these were like WrestleMania style entrances that they did.
Yes. And throughout the match, I thought they teed up Roman's interactions with both Solo and Jacob really well. Like Roman felt really special, both upon walkout, but also prior to each of his interactions with the two members of the bloodline. And again, milking every single ounce of energy from this crowd that they could. I also enjoyed like the sort of interplay between Roman and Cody. They didn't do too much like can they get along. The most they got was a bit of tension building by them debating who was going to start the match. But throughout it, I mean, they operated like, you know, not necessarily best friends, but people who were there working towards a common goal. Jacob Fatu, I think, continues to shine. He continues to be very well protected here. It required Cody to make a big sacrifice play in order to take Fatu out so that they could win the match. So Cody versus Fatu, really Fatu versus either of them still feels like a big match that they're saving for all of us. But then the stuff with Jimmy Uso coming back, man, it really did take this thing to another level because this was a crowd that they really want to see this old bloodline get back together, and I love that they're pacing it. I was expecting them to like do the J return here as well, but Jimmy was more than enough.
You've got a lot of time to get to that. That's a big one to do. Yeah, mm-hmm. you have almost 2 months before you want to get to that obviously before War Games, but yeah, great spot here with Jimmy appearing. Listen, the match was super over to this crowd, and I thought that they really turned it up to the next gear for the closing 5 to 6 minute stretch. This was everything I think people wanted out of this. I don't think I was as enamored as you were, but it was a very good match. It was number 2 on the show for me. Afterwards, Cody and Reigns are just looking at one another. Reigns is eyeing the title, and then he walks out of the ring with Jimmy. And then the Tongans jump Cody with Solo getting involved. Jimmy tells Roman, "You gave him your word." And Reigns is saying that was a one-time thing, but they opt to come back, fight off the bloodline, and Reigns picks up Cody's title, looks at it, hands it back. We get this super serious stare down of the last 2 years of WrestleMania as the big the sign is scrolling around the State Farm Arena promoting saucy nugs at Wendy's. I mean, Mark Shapiro was just like, his eyes were glazed here. And then The Rock's music plays and the place goes nuts. He walks out with his People's Championship, eyes the individuals in the ring, puts up the eyebrow, puts up the one, and then walks out as Michael Cole gives us the hard sell for UFC 307 coming up. Don't miss it.
Yeah. So, I mean, there, The Rock had appeared at, I forget the name of the
high school game. Yeah, about 80 minutes or so.
80 minutes away. So he was in town. I think he might have been in town just like to do work for Moana anyway. But anyway, he reports that he was going to, make some sort of appearance on the show. But I had totally forgotten it by the end. So like hearing this music on top of what I think was already an incredible ending to the show just really took this like pay-per-view to the next level for me. So they didn't give you like any direct illusions that like what The Rock is like the person pulling the strings for Solo or Jacob. But I think that's where they might be trying to lead you. Do you think this tees up anything in the immediate future for The Rock in the storyline, or is this more of a, hey, this is what's coming up at the very end of this entire story, the final boss?
Yeah, I mean, I don't rule out if they can make it work for an appearance. I would think that once they get on to Netflix, I would think you want Rock in the mix from like that January period on. And I just took this as like, listen, we teased the Cody match, and this was like confirmation that we're on that roadway.
I mean, the Rock match is there too, isn't there? Oh, sorry. The Roman matches.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have all these different combinations, but and I mean, they're going with this People's Championship deal as well, so they're not forgetting about that either, which they made a big deal about.
Which would allow Roman to have a title match with Rock, provided Cody, if Cody isn't the champion. Yeah.
So now that pales in comparison to the real People's Championship that will be two people will be competing for at Crown Jewel. Look forward to that.
Well, maybe he can go to Saudi for that one. Just on the note of this match, a lot of you guys in the chat room were alerting me that there is fan footage that exists of an angle being shot between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens outside of the arena, with Kevin Owens attacking Cody Rhodes. So
okay.
Yeah, there we go. I'm showing a bit of that. Hope I don't get copyright struck, but it looks like we are elevating this storyline via social media fan footage of Cody Rhodes actively attacking and beating down Kevin Owens attacking Cody Rhodes in front of his tour bus. So there you go. And I guess we can assume, oh, look at that Lamborghini back there. Oh, Kevin Owens is taking a trash bin.
Oh, no.
Watch out for the smells.
He's got beads.
Okay.
All right.
So
good find, everybody. So, yeah.
That's kind of a different way to do it. Damn, look at this.
What a great angle they got of this fan. I mean, imagine someone had missed this.
Yeah. So I like them shooting, angles like this. And we could assume the reasons being Cody really getting along with Roman Reigns,
or maybe Kevin Owens really wanted to hear just the regular version of Kingdom.
Yeah, I didn't want this
set
marching band shit
over the edge.
Hey, special shout out to the fan in the front row wearing our Post Wrestling Canada t-shirt.
Yes.
Saw it all evening, so thank you very much for that.
Chop-tees.com/Post Wrestling.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I've got to bow out because I have made a critical error. I'm never doing WWE and UFC shows on the same night again, but I am committed to doing this one and a show tomorrow with Eric Marcotte. So you can hear me then. I'm way behind on UFC. So I will bid everyone a farewell and talk to you soon, Wai.
Thank you very much, John. We'll be listening to you on Sunday with Eric Marcotte talking about UFC 307. Take care. But I'm still here, everybody. You're stuck with me as we take some feedback, both your phone calls and also your written feedback for all of our patrons at postwrestlingcafe.com. We have a lot of content out there. Those of you who listened already to our Vince McMahon documentary reviews, thank you very much for that feedback. We released a 6-part individual episodic review talking in depth about the topics covered in every single edition of Netflix's Mr. McMahon. So that is currently up there in the postwrestlingcafe.com Post Wrestling Cafe right now. $6 a month gets you access. We do SmackDown reviews every single Friday. We got Collision Course coming up probably right about now, actually, for those of you who are subscribed. We have Rewind Away that we just did, talking about Shibata versus Okada. Coming up, we'll be talking about Cena versus Punk from Money in the Bank 2011. MCU later, New Japan Pro Wrestling reviews, TNA reviews, all of that content at postwrestlingcafe.com. The best way to support us if you want to. And we go to our phone calls right now from our patrons. Let's start things off here with Hansi. Welcome to the show, Hansi.
What's going on, man? How are you? I'll just say, I'll say it was a decent show. Like I said yesterday, that I thought they started strong with it, and I thought all the other matches, not that they were bad, but I thought they all lacked afterwards. So listen, I understand why they had to do Roman and Cody last, but I'm one of those guys that think if you're gonna do it, I understand you gotta do a big surprise to close off the show, but I still think you could have done The Rock showing up, and you still could have maintained heat for Drew and Punk. I think they definitely deserve the main event, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if everyone's still talking about it. But I just found that I enjoyed that match more than everything else. I just felt everything else, and I honestly, I understand. It's I can appreciate the Roman Reigns thing where he's working because he's so over that you don't need to do all that much. It's all about emotion. But when you see that kind of match, I just sometimes think that these slow, methodical main events that Michael Hayes helps produce, I think sometimes they kind of like are less desired for me, at least at times, when I just feel like, okay, we're definitely getting a surprise, so The Rock is returning. You know what I mean? So that's what I really thought overall, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah, I think it's totally fair criticism. I personally have that type of opinion for a lot of Roman matches too, like from time to time. For me, it varies, and I think a lot of that depends on the context surrounding the match. You know, he has his style of match, but how interested I am, I think typically depends on how engaged the crowd is and how invested I am in the story. Tonight was one that I think I had plenty of like engagement with because this was Roman's return, his first real match as a babyface, the team up with Cody Rhodes after the 2
Yeah,
years long feud with him. So all of those elements, I think, like in the first interactions with Solo and Jacob Fatu. So for all of those reasons, I think even a lack of like, I don't know, like activity in the content of the match itself still spoke plenty to me.
I get that. And before I go, I just want to say that, yeah, I like Pollock's idea of Goldberg versus Gunther at Saturday Night's Main Event. I don't really care to see at Survivor Series. I would have. I see it. See, now I'm confused because if Sammy's getting a title shot, now I'm assuming that Braun Breaker is the one that might get the Survivor Series shot if they are going that. If he's even on the pay-per-view for Survivor Series, we don't even know that. But I like the idea of Saturday's Main Event. And I should mention for the press conference, I mean, it's been discourse, but now that Triple H addressed it, I thought you might want to know in case you want to chime in or anyone wants
What
to
did he
chime
say?
in.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Somebody, because again, you know how the people have been on, I don't know if you've been paying attention online about people kind of complaining, and they're valid complaints, right? I feel like people will dismiss it, but people were complaining that there was lack of black people on the show, in a show that's in Atlanta, right? And that always becomes discourse. Race discourse always becomes limited online, so I try to stay out of it. But somebody asked that, and Triple H basically gave like the all lives matter type of answer where he says, oh, I don't even see color, I don't see race. So that's getting a lot of traction right now online, whatever, because people always think it's a cop-out answer from somebody who doesn't want to address real issues. So I just want to let you know that that's one main talking point that's going viral right now on Twitter. So you can address that if you want. But thanks for all the shows. And I love. Listen, I didn't watch the Vince McMahon documentary. I had no interest because of the way you guys covered it good enough for myself that I don't feel I need to watch it. I knew everything that was going in. So I thank you guys for your coverage of all those shows, man. I appreciate you. Peace out, brother.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks, Hansi. Thanks for that note. I'd like to listen to the clip first before maybe I make comment, but I think it's a very interesting question and valid question to ask. So we'll probably talk about it on Monday at length once John and I have both had a chance to listen to the press conference. Let's go up next to Andy B. Welcome, Andy B.
Hi, Wei. How are you doing? I
Doing well.
wanted to say I'm not. I come away positive from Bad Blood because I'm a Punk fan, and I really enjoyed that match. That's my favorite WWE match of the year so far. But
Wow.
other
Okay.
than other than that, I thought the show under delivered, and maybe it's because like the catharsis of that Punk match kind of had me in a bit of a slump or whatever, or an adrenaline dump or whatever after that match. But nothing just hit for me after that point on the show. And like I go back to what I said to you the last time we chatted, and it's like I really don't think the best stuff is making these pay-per-views. Like it's a lot of Judgment Day and it's a lot of Bloodline. I get the Bloodline's the box office thing, but I think you really have to get the Judgment Day off these pay-per-views now. Like there has to be the IC division, there has to be Gunther. You have to represent some of these good programs on Raw on these shows.
Define best though, because if we're judging like by best by like most like largest crowd reactions, that would be the Judgment Day when we're talking about Raw. You know, like those segments with Dominic and Rhea and Liv get consistently the biggest reactions on the show.
But I mean, I suppose I meant more in terms of like qualitatively. I would say like the Bronson Reed stuff, like the where the New Day stuff is going, like the World Heavyweight Championship picture, and even the IC division, which have been booked well, come across as more interesting and even deliver in the ring that the Judgment Day stuff wouldn't do.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure at that point, like it kind of comes down to personal taste. But as far as like what is the most over, quote unquote, like to my perception. I would still very much put, especially like Rhea and Liv, their program up there. You can make the argument for Priest versus Balor, but it's also a bit more of a long-term program. Whereas I think like something like Reed versus Strowman has been fantastic for a TV format. Not to say they can't make a pay-per-view version of it, but as like something like they're not the type of big stars yet. Coming off of the feud that they've had, I think they're more than justified to have a pay-per-view spot. I also do think though, like in general, especially like us, like the sort of like quote unquote diehard wrestling fan, we put probably way too much emphasis on what makes a pay-per-view than we probably should, in my opinion. Like the fact is, this is now just a business, and they need to create equal interest in all of their products. And if if you load all your best stuff on a pay-per-view, then the TV shows aren't going to feel all that important. So I actually think like putting Gunther Zane on Raw is actually a sign of like respect for Gunther and Zane, especially Gunther, as a champion who I think they consider high enough to be able to draw an audience for Raw. So I don't necessarily think it's the slight that maybe some wrestling fans might perceive it to be. Thank you, Andy. Anything else?
That's very fair way. Thank you so much. Have a great one.
Always appreciate the call. Let's go up next to Muggin. Hey, Muggin.
Well, I mean, of course, I've been hounding about the Hell in a Cell, being the main event. It's not going to matter because Bad Blood as a whole was strongly bookended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, Pollock and McIntyre restored that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I mean, I was on edge.
What are your expectations for the next Hell in a Cell that they announce?
It's no longer a day on the calendar. I mean, it's been 18 months. It's been 18 months since the last one. The last one was Edge and Balor at WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
And
that one did have blood as well, didn't it?
Well, I know Finn. Finn got
unintentionally. Yeah, that they almost stopped the match for. Yeah.
Yeah, but like you could tell that that match had some handcuffs on it. But with this one, they didn't. But with this one, it was in the parameters. It was in the parameters because the old man isn't there anymore. Punk and Drew had a fucking ball to do with this one. The wrench, the toolbox, the beads. The part where Drew's on his knees begging for mercy with a bloody Punk, and oh man, that finish was just fucking nuts. I mean, the bump Drew took on his back with the steel steps. Oh, like I felt queasy. Yeah, God. I mean,
and to me, like I felt like that was the most dangerous spot of the entire match. And I'm sure it didn't feel good, but it also wasn't like the most dangerous thing. I feel like I see Darby Allin like do worse on a weekly basis. But the overall feeling we get coming out of this Hell in a Cell is that like this was a satisfyingly, violent match, right?
I'm telling you that it gave me what I wanted, and then some. And I'm sure there's a bunch of non-fans and a bunch of snobs saying like, "Oh, AEW be better." Look, this ain't the place for that. Okay, Pollock and McIntyre fucking bodied it.
They're both great. Yeah,
like top three cell match.
Yeah,
top 3 cell match.
Man, I hate playing with rankings, but like I'll definitely say this is a cell match that has made an impression on me like that many cell matches in years past haven't, and that's mainly because it is the actual culmination of a long-term feud.
And they took the time to get there. And granted, a lot of the time was Punk being hurt and everything for like 6 months. Yeah. But it's best like this is a culmination of that, and both men should be commended for keeping this feud alive for 9 whole months. And also found out that Abyss was the producer for that match.
Okay, well,
that motherfucker is a sick genius because he's been in his share of wars in TNA. Like I mean, he's so smart, man. I felt bad for Nia and Bayley for trying to follow that because
But
of
I thought
course-
Nia and Bayley did perfectly fine.
Yeah,
I mean, listen, like we definitely a lot of criticisms about the quality of the match, but in terms of crowd engagement, I think they more than delivered.
like Tiffany Stratton basically overshadowed those two, because like the last temptation of Tiffany Stratton continues, because I mean she almost cashed in, Nia caught her slipping, and and I took advantage of that, and when took advantage of Tiffany's temptation, and I wasn't I mean, it was cool to see Raquel back, well, literally, and I wasn't too hot on the the match with Liv and Rhea, and I feel like Rhea's gonna have another hoop to jump through.
Right.
Because I feel it, and on top of that, it's going to be a hard sell for Nia versus Liv, because who do you root for in this one? Because you have two heels, versus heel, and typically WWE doesn't do heel versus heel that often.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, something needs to happen. And another thing too, I don't mean to ramble, because in Survivor Series years ago, like many years ago, like they would book the card in advance, and throughout the build up they would do title changes. So that could be a way of avoiding that.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like AJ Styles being Jinder in Manchester, because
So who would win the championship in that instance? What title change would you see ahead of Crown Jewel on the women's side?
At this point, I don't know. I mean, they need to, if they run back Liv versus Rhea again, I mean, they have to put Rhea over, because but then again, it would be like a rehash if it's just going to be Rhea and Nia again. But they'll solve that problem later. And the main event was the Cody Roman's entrances. It felt like a game of one-upsmanship.
Mm-hmm.
Cody got a marching band and Roman got an orchestra.
Yeah.
And of course, I did love the Jimmy return. I mean, it was well overdue. And I yelled. I was on my way home from doing a grocery run. I was watching on my phone. I yelled in the car when Rock's music hit. I didn't crash into anything. I was in the driveway.
How did you watch the show if you're doing a grocery run?
No, I had it on my phone. I put the phone in the car as I was going home.
Oh, okay. Well, that I don't know if I recommend that. Watching.
No, I mean, I didn't speed. I didn't get hurt. So
were you watching the rest of the show as you were shopping for your groceries?
No, I was watching the most of it at home, and then I left like around 8 o'clock.
I see.
I'm fine.
Got it.
I'm fine.
Okay.
All
right.
But overall, Bad Blood is, I wouldn't say show of the year or anything. I wouldn't go that far, but it was strong. It was strongly bookended. But man, oh man, that cell match was something else.
Thank you very much, Megan. Appreciate the thoughts. All right, let's go up next to forum.postwrestling.com, where our patrons can leave written feedback. Let's go to Alex from Portland, who says, "What a fun show. The cell match felt like the violent end that the Punk Drew feud needed. Kudos to both men for bringing prestige to the cell. Dom getting hit like a piñata was a sight to see. His entrance with Liv was great. Raquel returning as a heel is hopefully going to help her get over more than simply being a smiley babyface. Tonight felt like the most over Jimmy Uso has been in many years." Question: how long do you see Liv Morgan keeping the title for? I'd like to see her lose it at WrestleMania, but she doesn't have many strong challengers besides Rhea. Yeah, I think Muggin brought up a great point about the interesting heel versus heel dynamic coming up at Crown Jewel, and whether or not that might hint towards an early title change. Because if there's anybody who's going to change the title, win the title, I don't necessarily see Nia losing it before Crown Jewel, because you got the Tiffany Stratton element. I wouldn't completely rule out the idea of Rhea beating Liv Morgan on television for a big TV, pop. So to answer your question, Liv Morgan could be keeping the title for maybe as short as a few weeks, versus holding it all the way till Survivor Series. I think ultimately Rhea has to win the championship from her. And I can see them ending the program at Survivor Series. So maybe that's what I see. WrestleMania feels like it's way too long for them to drag that out. So I worry Rhea would lose quite a bit of momentum by then. So, all right, let's go to Jeremy in Texas, who says in Texas, but in ATL tonight at the show, it really felt like a two-match show. To open with the intensity of Punk and Drew seemed to leave the crowd just waiting for the main event. With Cody being the true hometown guy, I was surprised the crowd seemed more into Roman. Giving Roman the pin instead of Cody probably advanced the story better. Cody spoke to the crowd after, but we didn't stay to listen because we didn't want to get stuck in too much traffic. Probably only a two-match show, but when The Rock appears, it makes the event, even if it was just a glare. Looking forward to listening to the review to see what was missed. Yes. Yeah, very interesting. Okay. You know, much of the criticism about the show seems to be the match placement of Punk versus Drew. So evidently a lot of people, including Jeremy, who was at the event, felt the same way. Scott in Atlanta finally wraps us up. He says, was at the show tonight with my 8-year-old. You are correct that the crowd was very hot all night. Have been to the arena 100 times, a dozen for wrestling. Never seen this packed. Low screen allowed a lot of sections to be opened up. Lines around the building to get inside beforehand. My company owns the building next door, and we had the WWE shop by Fanatics as a week-long tenant. They had many superstars on site yesterday for signings and pictures. My coworkers said the place was packed all day Friday. Not sure if that's normal for a non-Big Four PLE. The match order topic was discussed by people around me throughout the show. General consensus was Punk and Drew should have been the main event. However, the crowd was on a high the entire 2+ hours after the match, and people were buzzing from the opener throughout. The end of Liv and Rhea was met with total silence and confusion. Maybe a few thousand was rushed out of the arena by the time The Rock came out. I mentioned to my neighbors that the match order meant The Rock might show up, but they still rushed out. As we left after that, saw the Bloodline using elevators near the suites to get back downstairs. Very cool moment for my kid. Cody said off air to the crowd that Atlanta will get a WrestleMania soon, whatever that means. Thanks for all your coverage. I only write in when I attend, which is rare, so I want to take this chance to say thanks. Thank you to the both of you who attended live and took the time to get home or write on your phones that level of feedback. So Atlanta getting a WrestleMania soon, I mean, I certainly wouldn't completely rule that out. So yeah, thank you very much for some of that feedback, including all the extra detail about the WWE shop, which I mean, I can definitely echo. The last time they were here, or the last time I was in SummerSlam to witness the same thing. Like these shops, these physical stores are almost just a bit of a phenomenon unto themselves. So I'm sure they made a lot of money, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. And if you did, please sign up to the Post Wrestling Cafe so you can help us make a lot of money as well. $6 a month gets you access to a lot of bonus shows, access to feedback if you choose, and ad-free editions of Rewind to Raw, Rewind to Dynamite, and extra editions of bonus shows all week long. So that's it for me. For John Pollock, thank you guys for being here, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.